So thank you again all for being here, wonderful panelists. I appreciate it. We've got 12 applications to review today, and we're going to take turns being the lead reader, reading, introducing the project, and then if other panelists have additional comments, they'll be doing that after. If anyone is here and online, we just want to encourage you to stay for as long as you can. If you want to just pop in while yours is being, read, that's fine too. Sometimes the more you hear the feedback from different types of projects, that sort of thing, it'll help you if you aren't awarded to reapply for the next time. So we're going to be going through these applications pretty quickly, or the submissions pretty quickly, but I just want to assure you, the public and the applicants, that this wonderful panel right here has taken the last 2 weeks to really dive deep into your submissions. So they really have taken a lot of time. They've done a lot of research. They've checked, double checked in order to get the scoring that they did. All right, with that, let's have, and one more thing at the end of this, we are actually going to score them in real time, sort them in real time, so we'll know who actually is awarded the grant before this call is over. So with that said, we're going to start with Lori. She is going to begin with submission 0001.
Hello. Oh, I'm seeing your screen. I'm not seeing my screen. Okay.
Yeah.
I was all set up to read it from my screen. Okay. So the submission is a documentary project. The Invisible Homeless is the title, and this is focusing on the problem of homelessness that we have in our region, in our community, and the filmmakers have a committed attempt to really focus on some of the people and the faces and the stories behind this problem. So this particular group, I felt that they had the experience base. I think that the topic is certainly timely and worthwhile. I think this particular group indicated as an experience base and examples that show that they know how to put this type of content together, and we can see that they will deliver something to this project, and being able to deliver a finished project by the time this is all said and done. So yeah, I think again, it's not a new story. Homelessness is not a new story. But I think that every now and then you see someone who can, peel back the lens and show it from a different perspective. And I have hopes that these guys could do that.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
I can jump in, Lori. I sort of felt similarly to you. I thought the topic was incredibly relevant and very important. One of the unique elements to this application was kind of the set of diverse subjects that they planned to film. I mean, what I would have liked to have seen more of was some more information on the cast and crew, and a bit more local vendor information, specifically how they were planning on utilizing local vendors.
I had somewhat of a different take on this. I agree it's a very relevant topic, but the intent of the project is to answer a set of very massive questions in a short documentary. And I think even the applicant understands that this may be too much for the form they're proposing, because there's reference in several parts of the application where they're referring to this project as a first step toward a feature documentary. I guess I would encourage them to reapply and be clear about focusing on the project at hand rather than step two. I agree with Houghton here in terms of some of the details in the attachments. Some of the fundraising and budget information is a little confusing to me. And I think there are some inconsistencies that the applicant should take care to clarify.
Okay, anybody else have any other comments?
Yeah, I think that with a lot of feature-length filmmakers, the path begins with a short film that didn't really bother me as much, but I was really hoping to find, again, it was a very commendable project, really exceptional work, samples provided, very moving. It did give me confidence that they could complete the project in general, but I did want additional information on their specific experience relevant to working with this particular group of marginalized individuals, scoring very high for me on community impact in those areas of representation and local cast and crew, but really wanting just a bit more on how they've tackled challenging subject matter together in previous projects.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any other comments before we move on to the next applicant?
I
So
will
go ahead.
say, I just
Go
want to
ahead.
make a note because this has been such a critical point in past applications is the underserved communities and the reference to people and messages and storylines and crews and cast. I don't think that we had this team particularly reporting on that. So we really don't know what they brought to the table in terms of their own team. And the message itself, while it's representing a lot of underserved communities, you know, I don't know that this is specifically what we were talking about. So any thoughts that you guys had in that for this particular film?
I would say that the subject matter is certainly a marginalized community, whereas I think they were a little less specific on the team, and I ended up having to try to hunt down some members and decide if they were underserved or not, which is probably not what we're supposed to be doing. So I kind of gave them in the middle of the road on that grading.
Okay.
And I think that for me, I had similar questions, and I will have similar questions in certain areas that I think could be reflected across all applications. I think it's maybe more of a function of the questions that we are or are not asking. For example, if there was a requirement for key bios, personnel that are being asked to be supported by this fund, and that's a requirement, then we would have an opportunity to have very clear information about the key personnel. But I'm going to save that. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on that at the moment.
Okay. Great. So at this time, if you want to change your scoring at all, go ahead and do that. While Lori is introducing our next one. When you're ready, Lori, 005.
Oh, that's the next one. Okay.
Yeah.
So another documentary, which I think that you've all seen that there's a theme here. Another documentary that I believe is going to be episodic, starting with this short, I don't know that this is a definitive, I can't look at that again. Anyway, this happens to be a subject that is near and dear to many of us in filmmaking. A local filmmaker, Jamie Tafoya, suffered a stroke in 2017, and it had not only limited his ability as a filmmaker, but his side profession was as a chef, which he had actually just relocated to take on full time across the country when this happened. And what he's uncovered in his story of how to seek treatment, and in his particular situation, because he is Native American roots, the story itself has kind of taken a life of its own. And Jamie, as a filmmaker, has known that he needed to tell the story. And so we've seen him struggle against his own healing to be able to put this together, and something that we're very proud of as people that are supportive of him in the community. So I'm glad to see that he is reaching out for assistance. I think that it's something that meets a lot of the criteria and brings a local flavor to a topic that certainly isn't, only local. And I like the idea when we can put the Sacramento name into a project, or as participating in a project that helps us to stand out as community and be unique. It's a double bonus, when we have a film that does well, but it's also noting, Sacramento in some positive way. So I felt like there was a lot of opportunity for that to come from this film. So any other thoughts on Jamie's treatment?
I thought they demonstrated a clear ability to raise additional supports. This was maybe an example for us to re-examine how we are valuing or validating in-kind support. There was a certain amount that was indicated, but it doesn't really fit the mechanics of the application process. So I was wondering how to honor their ability to bring in-kind support. Didn't affect my my score on that. A couple of things that did, I felt it was a missed opportunity to provide maybe direct access to prior and relevant video work samples. And then it was hard for me to discern how much or what percentage was of the project that was currently funded, although it does look like it's, about a quarter of the overall project budget. I'm not sure if anyone else had that problem, but also, again, it could perhaps be solved by having specific fields that, that they're being asked to plop in a percentage and a number or whatnot, and it can be, sussed out automatically. I think for me, the biggest part was just a missed opportunity to expand on their experience. Returning new to Sacramento, after about, been here for about 12 years, but there's a lot of folks, and I've heard of their work, but my knowledge of them, or my lack of knowledge of them, shouldn't really have as much of a bearing. It should be in the application, and I just am ignorant in that regard.
So Jason, I had similar questions about the fundraising and the budget. It was unclear to me whether they had raised 8,500 and whether directly or in kind out of the 40,000, or whether they have, if that's what's been needed, or whether it's been raised and spent with 40,000 still needed. So I was equally confused about that. It's important to me in applications that people be very focused and precise about the way they're proposing issues. For example, this one is looking at the causes, prevention, and recovery journey. But when I look at the treatment, it is essentially a recovery journey. It really has nothing to do with the first two issues at all. And although it's not critical, it changes the scope for me and what it means. Anyway, that was a concern that I had.
I can jump in here. I thought the storyline was pretty moving. I mean, an incredibly relevant topic. Good representation, comprehensive representation of local vendors. Where I would have liked to have seen a little bit more information on the locations list. I know it's sort of a documentary and these things are still very much in process sometimes, but kind of fleshing that out a little bit would have been helpful. And then once again, a bit more information about who the crew is and how you're going to be utilizing them locally.
This is another example of where kind of structurally it's difficult for local crews to score high on the hotel rooms.
Uh-oh.
And here, this project seems like it's all in the execution and whether or not it becomes something that rises to a level of great filmmaking or kind of gets lost within the shuffle of documentaries about health recovery. I thought the Native American twist on it seemed interesting and relevant and sort of different. And it does say he secured interviews with a cardiologist, so maybe that's what they're going to talk about, the cause and some of those issues. But again, it's all about the execution, and interested to see if this goes forward.
I think this is the only submission, I'm not sure, that I was impressed that he included information on their distribution thoughts, and the fact that they've already got an initial commitment from PBS just shows, you know, they're thinking ahead. It's important in the whole production scheme. But I agree, I found some of the budgeting stuff somewhat confusing.
Okay, anyone else have any comments? So again, go ahead and score or rescore if you've changed your mind since the initial scoring, and to finish that up for the next few minutes. And next up, we have Todd doing number 0006. Bless you.
Thank you.
006.
Mic was on.
This is a film entitled Kobe. It's a short film, and the general idea here is that it follows a young African-American kid, Kobe Bryant, before he was a global sensation, as he faces his demons. And this will be done in both a literal style as well as what the applicant calls a magical realism style, involving a nightmare sequence with parkour and zombies and flight. The ultimate message here is that despite anybody's comments about what you can and can't do, you should never give up on your dreams. I thought this was a very laudable message about not giving up, and it's a catchy way to get there, using the broad emotional appeal of Kobe Bryant. There's clearly a great deal of planning and preparation that's reflected in both the shooting schedule and the detail and discipline implicit in the budget presentation as well. Questions remain for me on how the storyline reflects the lived experiences of marginalized communities. I think the issue of telling people they can or can't do something is a pretty universal thing, and not simply an issue for marginalized communities. I think there's a little bit more clarity about the number of local hires and the number and the use of internships.
Can expand on that, Todd. I thought it would have benefited from not just a screenplay excerpt in the support materials, some other kind of more thoroughly presented narrative response and or resume. The news segment was fine, but it wasn't a work sample per se. And I know that may also be a function of the instruction or the guidance that's provided, but it's not the only one, but I'll try to be consistent in calling it out where I think it could have impacted their score and my understanding of their work. So just a missed opportunity to expand on their experience.
For me, I felt like the addition of the script was a big plus. I felt like I could really visualize the project reading through the script. It's sort of very comprehensive, very coherent, very detailed. The shooting schedule, the way it was laid out and listed, that was kind of another strength of the application. And then I sort of felt like there was a good representation of local crew. I felt like I recognized a few names on there from the local film community. So overall, yeah, I thought this was quite a strong application.
I think the filmmaker certainly benefited from the fact that I know his work previously and hold him in high regard. I don't know if that came across in the application as clearly as it could have. I found myself wondering whether this should have to be relevant to Sacramento, and I guess that's not a criteria of the grant. I think it could produce an interesting project, and I know the filmmaker has done a pretty good job in previous projects in connecting it to race and class and overcoming obstacles.
Yeah. This particular filmmaker is a board member of the CFAA, so you know, I'm innately familiar with him and the work that he's done, and everything that you guys said about this is, you know, my thoughts as well. But I think he's just he's a Kobe of filmmaking, where he is going to push his abilities and his resources and his content into any possible arena to grow, which I admire, you know, greatly. I wasn't sure, maybe you guys know, if there was going to be an issue using Kobe's name or Kobe's likeness or Kobe's story. Is that anything that would get into the way of this story?
I think we ran into this on another project, and basically that's not up for you to decide, you know, it's
Okay.
for them to figure out. And so you're just judging it based on this.
Yeah, I didn't score according to that, but it was
Okay.
just a question that I had, and yeah, curious more than anything. But yeah, I feel very strongly that if this is granted, they will deliver a project that, you know, we can be proud of the money that we spent.
Okay, any other comments? All right, if you want to score differently, please do so now. And we are heading to number 9 with Todd introducing.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. Number 9 is a project called Authentic: Real Talk About the Cave. It's a short film by Eric Gravenberg. The intent here is to examine how people react when the comfort of their existence and their views of life are challenged by new information and alternative perspectives. The idea is to provoke discussion about getting out of our self-reinforcing echo chambers, bubbles, you know, breathe your own exhaust. The idea is to try to be able to see the value that community diversity brings to building a better shared future. This project represents part 3 in a series of authentic real talk films that have already been produced and accepted into Black film festivals in both LA and Atlanta. Lastly, this project represents an ongoing and growing partnership with Hawk Institute's Multimedia Academy, which is also a city grantee, serving high school youth of color and youth of underserved backgrounds. You know, 1 second, just lost my comments here. I guess what I really wanted to say about this, I really like the simple and straightforward approach to this issue, and the way they're going to make it happen. I thought the budget and the shooting schedule were directly supportive of what they're proposing and very clear. I think given the experience they've had and the past work of the applicant and their notable collaborators, I have a lot of confidence that they're going to complete what they've promised here. And there's an enormous collateral benefit for youth participation and development. And I think that's just a great bonus.
Yeah, I'm with Todd on this. I think the previous work that was submitted was incredibly professional and it definitely piqued my interest. What I would have liked to have seen more discussion of was the characters, kind of getting a bit more information about them. And then once again, also more information about the local crew.
All right, anyone else? Any other comments on this? If no, Houghton? You're on my screen. I thought maybe you were going to say something. Okay. All right. So go ahead and make any changes you want to your score now. And we are on to Lori again for number 10.
Hold on, holy moly.
It's a lot. I appreciate you guys doing this. It's a lot of applications. It's a lot of scoring. It's a lot of comments. So I
Well, the
appreciate
notes that I have on mine versus seeing your screen too, I need to just.
you. Okay.
That was 9.
No, yeah, that was 9. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So the title of this project is Counterfeit Cabernets. This is a short film, but again, it kind of reads like it's gonna take a lot longer than that. Let me go back to my notes here. So this particular project, I felt like they didn't appear to have the funding sources secured. Local cast and crew weren't referenced at all yet.
Can you advance the presentation there?
Talking to Jennifer.
Diana's doing it.
Oh.
This is the entire treatment that she's showing right now on the screen.
Yeah. I found their treatment also very difficult to maneuver. I wanted information to be provided in a different format than this. It bugged me, but I didn't get the information that we seem to be looking for in regards to, securing funding, any local cast or crew, zero reference to diversity in the story or the crew. And it looks like only part of this is being shot in Sacramento, but I'm not quite sure why, because it could be any city. And I'd like to know that they have connections in Sacramento or with Sacramento, because who they are and what they can accomplish has, I think, a lot to do with that. And I just really kind of felt like this was an old story. I wanted, for the story itself, I wanted to see something different. The wine auction is a new twist, but it just didn't really strike me as a story that I would want to see. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had a problem that like the two protagonists are white guys and everybody bad is a minority. That may hurt your long-term viability of what you're trying to do.
Laurie, maybe it's because I'm a visual learner, but I thought the deck was very descriptive and I really enjoyed it. It was sort of easy for me to follow. I also like the kind of laying out the themes. I appreciated that. And then the character list I felt was really detailed and very strong. I really kind of got a sense of who each of the characters were.
I think I
So I
said,
think, I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
I think I said about in the middle. I did feel that the materials were visually appealing, but perhaps lacking in some information that was remarked earlier. I would have liked to have seen more evidence of their ability to raise the necessary capital. Regarding, I guess, inclusion, I did note that they do make a nod towards attempting to identify BIPOC vendors, which is not always something that's called out. So I thought that was good. I guess it might come back to a question on the kinds of materials that we were requesting of them. The first work sample video link did not work for me. It could be me, it could be my browser, but just overall emphasizing the inclusion of links and links that work and or are not password protected, that sort of thing, would really help a lot of the applicants overall. The work sample that I was able to view, I thought it was strong and it did give me a sense of the direction that they're going in, but I did note that this is 60% filming in the Sacramento region. I wasn't sure if there's a kind of minimum threshold, but that did seem low, if not was the lowest. Strike that last comment. I'm not comparing between the others, but it was low for filming in the Sacramento region.
Mm-hmm.
So I had two comments. First, I wanted to second Ed's comments about the heroes and villains issue that he raised. I think it is very relevant given the criteria that we have about marginalized communities, lived experience, and so forth. So that I think is something that the applicants should reconsider. And the second thing is it does characterize itself in the application as a feature-length film, and $60,000 budget just seems a bit meager to accomplish something that has so many moving parts as this proposal.
I have a friend that's working on an animated film, and I kept feeling like, is this an animated project? It's taken that tone with nothing live referring to the narrative. So it was well done as far as that goes, but it was confusing to me as a filmmaker.
Okay, anyone else? All right, Lori, one more, and I promise this is your last lead reader role. Sorry.
You could just do them all.
Oh God. You know, I just need two computers to keep track with everything. Okay, let me go back.
So number
So this-
11.
Yes, I got that right here, stirring up drama. This, I actually was kind of intrigued by this particular program and where they could go and what they could do with that. The notes that I had specifically, this is how long the page is, you guys. I felt like it was an aggressive budget and a plan, but if the funds could be secured, again, this is one of those ones where I felt like it would be a great film that Sacramento could appreciate being named in. This is the concept is to take theater buffs who were involved in high school and bring them together to do a single performance, a one-time only performance, and work together again. So you've got, you know, moms and dads instead of kids that are getting up on the stage and reliving their experiences, and also the backgrounds of why they did that and what it brought to them and how it, you know, affected their lives. And I just thought that was really an interesting human dynamic, human story. I think that they definitely need to work with local agencies to find cast and crew. The zero reference to diversity in this, again, it represented a different dynamic of people who are often underserved or unseen in high school, and that's the art geeks. But of course, that's not a protected class. So I don't know that it meets all that criteria specifically. But I felt strongly, and from the examples that were left, that the probability factor was very high in this. And again, if it's one of those things that's made well and it looks like the team has the capability of doing that, I think it could be something that would be a fun thing to have our city's name on and be involved in. What did you guys think?
I enjoyed the concept more than I enjoyed the preview. Watching the preview, you realized, oh, they're all middle-aged white women now. If you were an executive producer, you would not have cast this high school. You would have gotten somebody who had a crack problem and is now in recovery, and some more kind of diversity of stories. The preview looked boring. The idea is great. That's where I am. I think they could finish it. I don't know if I would watch it.
So if they expanded theoretically to include a much broader scope of diversity, I think that's ideally that's feasible. But yeah.
But the creator chose his high school and his friends, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that on this one too. I think if they picked a completely different high school that at least had some opportunity for diversity when these adults were children or when they were in high school, it would have had more promise. I think this is an idea that has a lot of commercial potential. But again, I think the diversity has to be ramped up quite a bit. I would suggest that they follow Ed's advice and find a different high school to do this with. It's still a valid idea. And I think that the budget it was quite a bit for a project like this. But I think they need to do I think they need to raise a substantial sum first before coming back here to look for funds from the city.
It was hard for me to actually determine how much of the project is currently funded. And I was trying to understand the low numbers. The opportunity for local internships seemed rather low, especially for a project with this kind of potential economic impact.
Sorry, I just got kicked out of my submittables and need to open again. Does anybody else have anything to say about this applicant? Oh, gosh. All right, so make any changes, and we are moving on to Houghton with number 12.
Okay, so number 12 is short film project. The title is Who Are You? The applicant applied for a $10,000 production grant. And the short film is essentially about a romantic drama about a man and a mysterious woman who meet at a bar. Some of the strengths of the application, I feel like in particular, this application indicated this was kind of the filmmaker branching out and trying something new within their creative practice, planning to present the short film as a silent film, so sort of challenging their sort of creative skills. I felt like the application could be improved by giving us a much more detailed storyline, fleshing out the character details. And overall, I felt it was a great first attempt, and I scored it accordingly. And I sort of encourage them to take the notes and then resubmit. Anybody else?
It was a straightforward project to me. While there was some acting experience evidenced, I wanted to understand their background as a filmmaker, director, producer, etc., pushing this project forward. Would have liked more information regarding any local hires. I felt that the resume wasn't really focused on their directorial or production experience. And I think it was a missed opportunity to articulate the connection to marginalized communities. It's another example of maybe a missed opportunity to share direct work samples. Yeah, let's see. And then I couldn't determine the current percentage of amount funded.
Yeah, I found that there was insufficient information provided in the planning and the budgeting. It didn't seem ready for production. It seemed like this was somebody who was doing it for the first time, which is okay, but you know, what do we want to support? And there was zero reference to the diversity questions in the film and the cast and the crew. I do want to say, if this is somebody who's doing something for the very first time or going down this road, I applaud their effort to seek grants for film funding, because a lot of people that have had a long history of creating are, you know, now reaching out for this money. For someone to do it with one of their first films, if not the first film, I just wanted to applaud that effort, because that's not easy.
I agreed with the points made. The story's relatively stale. The twist on the battered woman could make or break it. It would be all about execution. It's certainly doable, but it certainly seemed like early on in the creator's career. And then I hope they keep creating, and there's something else later that we can approve.
Mm-hmm.
One quick additional note, speaking to the perhaps relative newness of the applicant and filmmaker, I noticed that there was a somewhat high budget line item for festival submissions, $3,000, right, out of a sub $20,000, $30,000 project, perhaps. I would encourage them to reconsider that. Not spending so much money on festival submissions.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. If you have any changes, go ahead and do that now. And we are going to move on to number 13 and Houghton.
Yep, number 13 is an unscripted television project. The title is Game of the Week. And the applicant applied for a $10,000 production grant. Project is essentially focused on the streaming of local high school sports games and kind of presenting an ESPN style sort of sports show. I felt like this application was incredibly detailed, all the components of the application really impressed me. I really got a sense of the community impact of this project based on the application. And also, I mean, just kind of how important the applicant Access Sacramento has been to the city. As I think it came across as a real community resource, both for the local film crew and interns, as well as the athletes who are having their games streamed and being interviewed and so forth. I really commend the applicants on the thoroughness of the application. It's based on the reputation that I kind of gleaned from the application and the thoroughness of this application. I didn't have any recommendations for improvement, and overall I thought it was a really strong submission, and I scored it accordingly. Any other thoughts?
I also scored this the highest of any of the applications. I completely agree with Houghton's comments. The only question I really have is whether this is it's a policy question, whether this is the most appropriate funding source. You know, if there's youth development money that the city has, that might be a better source, because this is not sort of creative filmmaking, right? This is something that's been tried and true over a long period of time. And if it is the community resource they appear to be, there ought to be different kind of funding available for them, maybe even through the school district. So.
Wow.
I think Access Sacramento has fingers in every possible grant application that they can apply for, that they meet the requirements of. They're really just, I think, having to scramble in the last few years because of funds that they have lost. So we're seeing them reach out more. I wasn't sure, while I'm a huge advocate of Access Sacramento, and I want to support anything that they're doing, whether or not we were talking about live action shows that would be continual versus a single project narrative or documentary or whatever other that we've looked at so far. That was my only question is, you know, can we fit them into this description that we have for funding a project? And, you know, I think if nothing else, when we know it's money that is well spent on a project that's going to be completed and delivered and speak well to our production capabilities, you know, I have a thumbs up for that.
May I just jump in with one sort of different way to think about it, maybe? So let's say we give them $10,000. They're going to need this every single year.
Or to find that money somewhere else, yeah.
Well, right, but right.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that becomes the challenge of 2024. I'm a former board member. I've been off the board member of Access Sacramento for over a year now. And this is the existential threat of the declining cable monopoly. They're going to have less money every year until there is no cable franchise fee anymore, and they need to adopt and find new ways to fund things. And reaching out to any available film or television grant is part of that strategy. Whether it's for this fund to fund that, I don't know if that's our decision. I rated it based on what we saw, but that remains an ongoing challenge for Access Sacramento to meet, and for, I guess, this institution to decide whether or not it's appropriate for it to be funded.
I really appreciate Todd's comments and everyone's just the discussion. Sounds like perhaps a policy area for the future, but for the time being, it was in front of us. So I did have similar concerns, but you know, it's here and they're eligible. I while I thought absolutely thoroughness and professionalism was throughout the application, a couple of areas I thought they could perhaps improve. I didn't feel that the testimonials had to be couched within the hotel nights piece of the documentation, right? It was like, we'll just slide this in there, right? I didn't think that needed to have happened. I would have really liked to understand how their approach to the students, to the young people, subjects, what will that look like as members of marginalized communities? How will that manifest in the treatment and in the overall production? That's, I think, my biggest question, because I get it, and I do see value in uplifting the stories of these young folks, these young athletes, right? But I just wanted a little bit more depth in that area. And then, just to be consistent, I do feel it would have benefited from, I mean, yes, it's Access Sacramento, but direct access to a relevant work sample that speaks to this type of, I guess, episodic, unscripted television segments, recurring segments, that would have been helpful.
Okay, anyone else? Any other comments? All right, if you want to make changes, do so now. All right, we are moving on to Ed with number 14.
I just got kicked out of mine, so do you want to go ahead and just play the?
Okay. Okay. What are we pulling up for you? We can't pull up your comments.
No. So this is a potentially powerful story. It's a feature-length documentary addressing a queer East African Indian business mogul and basically her journey to veganism. You know, at first glance, I was like, this seems a little bit fanciful, but I went outside of the information and looked up the creator and saw a pretty glowing article about her from Sacramento State, and said, well, perhaps this is a story worth telling. It seems like they have some experience doing this kind of work, and it certainly seems like a unique vantage point and story to tell. And essentially, I think we're paying for somebody to follow her around and start this business and talk to people about veganism. I had questions about the structure and how it will all play out, but I had it was weird reading that really glowing article about her, and I was like, well, maybe we've got a female queer Kanye in our midst, and this is something that needs to be documented. I had questions about some of the numbers of locations and businesses linked to it and how that all plays out. But if those numbers are accurate, then it scores very highly. I'd really be interested to hear what other people thought reading this, and whether you got the same impression that this is somebody that's magnetic that needs to be captured in some way.
I felt like for a project, it was a very extensive project, and a lot of the points that they were awarded based on just the answers to their questionnaire were based on the volume of people being hired and based on the number of locations, and they're big numbers comparatively speaking. But I felt like the budget was missing standard production costs and some key job titles and pay information. it seemed unusually high in other areas, and yet I couldn't see that justified in the broken down budget. The links to previous productions also were not working. So in trying to see what had been created, and again, maybe it was my browser, but it felt like a dichotomy of information from a much bigger production, and yet planning on a local level. Like it just wasn't quite matching up. But I noticed that the point values, just based on those literally first 3 or 4 questions, help them immensely because of what they're promising, what they're putting out there for the scope of their project.
Is that our role to kick the tires on their reported numbers? Because it seems like you could inflate it if you just add more locations and more interns and more.
Yeah, so we talked about this in previous rounds that, you know, you obviously want to take people at their word, but if for some reason their budget and their schedule, their shoot days don't all line up and you have some questions, then we should be questioning them at face value.
So this is an area where it is really tough for me to, I mean, essentially not, you know, we're questioning what's written in front of us based on what, you know. I think that, I mean, absolutely across the board, these first 2 categories, they're hitting the highest marks possible because of what's there. I think perhaps consideration for the future would be a combination of more how-based questions. So, narrative responses that express how they're accomplishing what they're saying they're going to accomplish through straight quantitative figures. That might help this feeling that I did have. I mean, they received the highest marks, but yet there were some pretty big holes. I just wasn't sure how they were reaching these figures for local hires. You know, then the weight of feasibility, it is 20% out of the 80, or 100, so against the 80. But I didn't evidence any actual filmmaking experience or film production experience. It was, it was about the personality. They say that themselves, they want to be recognized as a Sacramento living legend. But this is a film project, and I wanted more information about the feasibility. And at the same time, feasibility is, just a fifth of the overall score. So I wasn't sure what to do with it, but I'm going to just go with the numbers.
I'm in the same place as Jason and Lori, that these feel like very inflated numbers, but who's to know? There's nothing in the budget that sort of or any of the attachments that reflect how they're going to get to the end point with the numbers they have. And so it's hard to take it at face value. I do recognize Ed's comment about, the sort of force of personality that is suggested by the applicants, and I see that. And some people just don't fit into sort of the administrative niches that public programs create. But it would be nice if there were some sort of technical assistance or some communication with this applicant to sort of help walk them through some of these steps. But for right now, the numbers feel inflated to me.
Well, if you have changes, go ahead and make those now. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to say? Go ahead. All right, where are we? We are on number 15. Ed?
Yeah, that's me again. This is a film produced by a somebody who went to college in San Francisco and wants to come back to produce a project in Locke. Most of you are probably familiar with the Locke, which has
Uh-oh.
Chinese historical background, and this project plays into it. It's described as a half-hour vignette episodic television series with stories occurring in the one episode that don't impact each other, kind of a Twilight Zone kind of thing set in this last rural Chinatown. I thought, at first reading it, I thought there was some strength to what they were doing. I think that's uniquely culturally different, the town of Locke. But digging into the filmmaker, it seems like this is relatively new in their career path, having recently finished at San Francisco State. I came away feeling like they probably could produce this thing. It seems a little ambitious to be doing episodic television like this. So I guess I'm sort of in a mixed position on that, as feeling like this is something that's gold in sort of our region, but not sure that this is ready for prime time.
Anyone else?
So of the 15,000 that they've raised, 10,000 is already from another city grant. So if we were to give them a grant for their 10,000 request, the city would have funded 20 of the 25,000 they would have raised so far. I guess I would encourage them to do some other outside fundraising before coming back and looking for a second grant from the city.
Any other comments?
I think it was a very creative project. It's a very creative project combining history and in a contemporary setting. I was interested to know more about any engagement from folks that are working on historic preservation efforts for the town of Locke, given the subject matter. This is another example where being a place-based project could have gone the other way, but they do indicate a decent number of hotel stays, even though it is a local, I guess, locally based shoot. The budget form was a bit incomplete for me, and perhaps not as developed, and that may speak to the relative newness or perceived newness of this applicant. But again, it is what we have in front of us, and for the moment, there's no separation between established and emerging, so to speak, filmmakers. So I thought it was a strong effort. Probably full disclosure, I was working on the creative seeding creativity grants for the city and consulted, not obviously paid by this individual, but supporting the city's grant process. And they were one of the folks that I had consulted that received the award.
Okay, I don't think that disqualifies you in the language of the conflict of interest. Does anyone else?
No.
Okay.
And my notes were really basically the same, just that I felt like Locke is a visual treasure trove as a film destination, and telling the story of old versus the new with a narrative twist. It's an interesting concept, but the budget, again, missing key personnel and standard production costs. So that it's got holes in it. And then there was no information provided about the money raised, of course. So I like the idea of doing something, because if you've been to Locke, you can't help but be just kind of amazed at what it's all about. But it needs to be done right. And I feel like this needed some work.
Okay. All right. We are on to Jason, number 16. And I will add that this is our only post-production grant, which just tells people listening, you should be applying. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, post-production request for 5,000. The project title is Vayan con Dios, a documentary short. It is intended to go towards the post-production work for the completion of a story about women who are leading the charge for fair wages and better working conditions for farm laborers. I really appreciated the personal connection to the documentary subject matter. Really commendable personal financial commitment to tell this story. I thought that one of the work samples stood out to me, the documentary teaser, and it provided a good indication of what is to be expected if awarded funding. A good ability to raise project funds from external sources, although I felt perhaps the budget felt a little small. That said, the length of the project may be a contributing factor to the budget size, so just kind of trying to balance that out. I felt that it would have been helpful to provide a direct link again to more past work, and the Children Could Fly work sample for me was, I was not able to view that. So overall, I felt that this was a good application, a solid, good application, although I would have liked additional information. This is an example of an application that does not benefit from the number of nights question regarding economic impact. I think that for me, that area, along with local hires and the number of local support companies, did weigh the application down.
Anyone else have any comments for this application?
I just said, I feel confident this documentary will address important concerns and illuminate history. The producers indicated a commitment that should be recognized, and the team is very capable of producing a finished project with these funds. So I saw no glaring reason to not support that.
All right. Okay. And last but not least, number 17, Jason, if you will help us out.
All right. So this is back in the production category, a $10,000 request for Barbara Kings and Queens of Sacramento, a documentary. Sounds like a fun and interesting project concept to me. I appreciated the attempt to include and approach a community and an industry with a unique story that's not often told. I appreciated the storyline treatment. I acknowledge the ability to secure 50% of the funding. It does have a very grassroots feel, sort of, you could feel the networked connections. That said, I would have liked a little bit more information regarding the potential subjects. It is kings and queens. I would have loved to hear more about the queen's piece. Would have loved to at least have some preliminary indication of who the actual barbers were. They do make a good, they present a good case for wanting to seek out diverse subjects throughout the city. It would have helped to just have some indication of who they're targeting. The amount of the project funded was, again, difficult for me to assess. I didn't really see a clear answer. There's one area of the budget that I'm just not sure how I feel about. It is a $2,000 request for the venue. The venue being a piece of the, well, I guess the central physical piece for the event that is paired with this this documentary. So I'm not sure how I feel about.
So that's not part of production.
Well, it could be,
I mean, it's part of
right? It's not
their
post-production.
marketing. It's, yeah.
Yeah. So I just wasn't sure. I don't know if you have a different information or perspective on that, definitely educate me. But it's to a venue rental, as I saw it, to hold the event. So presumably it would be a deep part of the production. But venue, I mean, we're looking at location rentals and all of that. So maybe it's fine. Maybe the city has a particular perspective about that. But back to the experience, I thought that while the resume shows a good amount of project and professional event management experience, the actual filmmaking experience was difficult for me to gauge, and there was limited evidence of the ability to complete this project, especially because it does kind of feel like this two-headed dragon. Opening up to others.
My notes include that no real reference to the team's experience or proof of their ability to complete the project. No money's been raised to date. I mean, the information was not included. And I feel like this is one of those where they could get some sponsors and they could get some support before they start looking for grant money, which would help show that the viability of something if there's more, backing it. And it seems like to have a physical event and that's involving a particular, industry and people and shops all over, that you definitely could find some sponsors. I could find some sponsors. So I think there's still some work to do, but I think that it could be a really fun program. They just need to keep working on fleshing it out and making sure that what they're going to film, not just what they're going to perform, but what they're going to film. And then, how do you not only create it, but you complete it and you distribute it? What's the plan for that? This looks like they want us to pay for an event and they want to shoot the event. And that's not, I think, quite the same thing that we're trying to address.
I concur with a lot of the thoughts previously expressed. I feel like I've already seen this. We saw this in Atlanta. Somebody said, oh, we should do this here. I don't think it's uniquely Sacramento. I think 20 barbers, probably too many. And then it feels like the bit at the end there is tacked on. We will also be giving back to the community by inviting unhoused community members to participate. Do community members who are unhoused really want Barber Kings to like give them a great looking controversial haircut, or do they just want to look normal? So it was unclear to me how those two ideas are integrated. Are the barbers going to show off their best dues, or are they going to try to make people reintegrate them into the community? So that feels kind of tacked on, and I agree. It sounds like somebody who wants to do a barber competition who was like, oh, here's a way to get some money to film it, without really thinking about who's going to film it. Even the company that they kind of reference that will be handling it seems like a website company, not a film company. So yeah.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so now is the time. If you have any more changes, please make them now, because in the next minute, I'm going to give you 1 more minute to change any scores, and then Diana is going to sort them. So let's give it 1 minute if you want to make any changes additionally, which you didn't have time to do before. Do them now.
Do we have a drum roll?
Late.
Okay, does anybody need more time? More time, anyone? Okay, Diana. I'm just refreshing my page to make sure that mine matches yours. Okay. And it does. So the winners of this round is Magunzo Entertainment, Access Sacramento, Diadana Smoquette, and Pedro Garcia for the post-production $5,000 grant. All right, well, I want to thank all of you for participating. Thank you so much for doing this for the film community. Super important, and I just want you to know I all appreciate you very much. All right, so panelists, get in touch with me with your, I did take